We are back on the Chosen Journey podcast with Big Money Grip, Steve Karsay, Jonathan A. Hacohen. And as promised, this week and next week, we're going to be talking about the off season, the hot stove season, and player movement, and decisions have to be made. This week, I wanted to go, Steve, with one player specifically because baseball's a buzz because this one player has spent his whole career with one city. They're probably going to build a statue for him outside the stadium. Cornerstone guy, I think future Hall of Famer if I was going to bet first ballot. And the first time he's becoming a free agent now. And I'm really torn about what is going to be his future. And it matches the color of your shirt because it is the one, the only Joey Votto. Joey Votto is a funny guy. You know, when he's injured, he goes around to different stadiums. He talks with the fans. He lives it up. He just seems like a really cool dude. Very beloved in Cincinnati. First question foremost, Steve, can you imagine Joey Votto wearing another uniform besides the Cincinnati Reds?
Yeah, really tough to see, right? I mean, the Reds are just in a different spot right now, and they can't pay Joey Votto what maybe he feels like he's worth playing, first base and going into another year. They're at a they're at a turning point where they're getting a lot younger, they're getting more athletic, and they can use those dollars elsewhere. So it's really hard to see a guy with one team for 17 years or so and then possibly go into another. But ultimately that's his decision if he feels like he's still capable of producing and putting up numbers. And you never know. Maybe he ends up north of the border and does something there with the Blue Jays.
This is one of those things where don't know if you've been following it much, but it was not the most successful season for the Blue Jays. They made the playoffs, lasted about 3 minutes, and were bounced by the Twins. The city is not that happy about it. Moreno went and won a Gold Glove with the Diamondbacks, one of the best catchers now in baseball. Um, Mr. Varsho did not have the best season. Yes, he was fantastic defensively, one of the best defensive outfielders in the game. Did not win a Gold Glove, but didn't produce that spark that they expected. Gurriel had a great year for the D-backs. Certainly helped that lineup, and now he's a free agent. Brandon Belt is probably going to move on. Chapman's going to move on. City's a little bit up in arms about this. A really good way to make the fans sit down and start clapping again is bring back the hometown boy. He grew up in Etobicoke, Ontario, Canada. He's very well known in these parts. I think a homecoming for Joey Votto could be the recipe for a nice fit for both team and player.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes the most sense, right? Again, financials are going to come into play. What the Blue Jays feel like he's worth, what he feels like he's worth. Can they make something work? You know, um, but it's not uncommon to see players who do play with one team, either stay there for a lesser contract if the team really wants them. A la Derek Jeter when he signed his deal at the very end of his career before retiring, or do they move on and play a year or two in a spot that's uh, like a homecoming or somewhere where they're from, if that's a viable spot for them. So, tough decision on both ends. I think Cincinnati has made their decision. Now, Votto will have to make his decision and see what is best for him and his family.
Back in the day, Steve. So as a little young boy, I used to have my baseball encyclopedia by my bedside, and I used to love to read it every night and read about the history of the game. So back in the day, you had actually player managers, right? A player that was transitioning, that was a part-time player, and he was a future manager. The team said, you know what, for payroll purposes, let's just have him as a player manager. Are we ever going to see that again? Is there a chance the team takes Valdo and says, you know what, we need a manager? Why don't you just be our manager and be our part-time player at the same time? Or are those days done?
Those days are done. There's too much information in the game now for a player to digest all of that and then be able to run the dugout while being on the field or being in the lineup. It's just not feasible. I mean, the game has grown so much, and the information portal now is so big that they're adding coaches because of the information, not subtracting them.
So now let's say out of 30 teams, but I would say at least 15 teams could use a Votto as far as occasional first baseman, mostly DH. The whole DH position has evolved because you had the Dave Parkers in the days, and these full-time DHs and the David Ortizes. Now it seems like with injuries, it's nice to roll through the DH spot and not have somebody clogging up your DH all year unless his name is Shohei Ohtani. But I would say at least 15 teams could look at him possibly. With Brandon Belt moving on, he would be the logical mix to go from a Belt to a Votto, same type of role. But here's the way I broke it down. So I'm going to give Joey Votto 4 options. I'm going to say nothing. If you had to rank from 1 through 4, let's go through the options of where we could see this. So possibly returning to the Reds as far as they're saying, okay, we have such a stack of young players. We got no room at the end. But you know what? You can take the 25th spot, 26th spot, and take the bare minimum, and we'll give you like pitch hitting duties or what be it. You could be on our bench. Great. The Jays we talked about. Possibly another team popping in like the Yankees, Red Sox, whoever, or Votto saying, you know what, I can't see myself ever wearing another uniform. Injuries took a toll. I'm done. Sayonara. See you in Cooperstown in 5 years. Let's go one by one. If you were a betting man, where would you say option number 1 lies?
About 10%. He's not going to take the minimum, first of all,
Okay.
and he's not going to want to stay around in a Reds uniform not to play. If he's healthy enough to play, he wants to find the spot where he's going to contribute and he's going to be part of the whole as a team.
Okay, so we have to pick option number 1 then. Is it retiring? Is it joining the Jays? Or is it a mystery team otherwise?
For me, I give the highest percentage to him joining the Jays. 1, it's his hometown. 2, Vlad, has been beat up in his knees. He was injured last year. I'm sure that they could find spots to alternate them with the DH role and first base. Left-handed hitter, right? And Vlad right-handed. So, not that matters when the lineup, but they could, right? I mean, that's the platoon option that he would have, and I don't think he's retiring. And I think, and I haven't really looked at this, but I'm not sure how many winning teams need a first baseman at this particular point. And it's not an everyday first baseman for Votto. It's probably a platoon type of situation. And I don't know. I just don't see him, going to a off team just to play another season.
I agree. I would say if I had to go number 1, I can't see him anywhere but the Jays at this point. I think coming home, they have the most need for him. I think he'd play great in that ballpark. I think the team needs a jolt, a little more leadership. Chapman's going to be gone. Belt's going to be gone. They have to fill it in, and he's the perfect guy. So if he's going to go anywhere, I think they could pony up the most money. If I'm going to go number 2, my instinct is that same thing like you said. I think it's going to be a contender. I don't think it's going to be the Tigers, for example, and help a rebuilding team. He's going to find, like I'm just saying, Gurriel goes maybe the D-backs, and he says, you know what, they had a great season. They have a mix of young players. I can come in there. I can DH. I can play a little first base. Also, it's one of those things of geography. It's funny, Steve, but like we're going to talk about this next week a little bit. But when people make their decisions of where they're going to go in life, family, home base, where spring training is, where they play in the regular season, does play a part. We've seen guys are West Coast guys or East Coast guys. And as Craig Counsell showed, he went to their rival, but it's pretty close to home. There's a reason why he's close to home and not on the West Coast or even in New York.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, players take in, especially when they get older and they're more solidified, I think they take into account, and cut down where they would go and where they would play on geographical purposes, instead of just going all over the country and doing that, because they've been there, done that, right? And now if they're a free agent, they get really the option to choose what they would like to do if the options are in front of them.
So if I'm going to go with the mystery team, if I was going to draw out of a hat, I think he'd be a Tampa Bay Rays darling. Like with their analytics and everything, they would find a way saying, you know what, I think he's healthy now, and look what he could do in our lineup. And the Rays just know how to slot people. So I'll go with the Rays as option number 2 or a mystery team. 3 and 4, if we had to choose between part-time Reds player or retirement, I agree as well. I think number 3 would be retirement. Actually, the last option is a bench player, 1 at bat, 2 at bats a week, and just sitting in the number 25, number 26 slot on that bench. I don't see it happening either. So I think he'll retire before that happens. But my gut says that he's got something left in the tank. I watched him this year when he came back up. The Reds just have, they have an abundance of riches. They've got so many first base, third base, DH outfielders. They all came up at once. Steve, their farm system is incredible from all the trades they made in the drafting, and it's not Votto's fault. But when you have players that are ready to play right now and hit 25, 30 home runs and steal you some bases and play great defense, you got to play the kids, especially in a small market.
Well, and they're also making $725,000 instead of 20 million. It's a little lighter on the pocketbook for a young player to develop them and try to roll with them instead of paying a guy who you feel is every bit worth it as a person, but the production you're just not going to get out of him at this point after 17 years. It's taken its toll.
And that's the thing. If you had the Cincinnati Reds like that from 30, 40 years ago, it's a dynasty for a decade. Now you can't even keep them for 5 years anymore. It's just that's the economics of the game. That's the reality of it.
Yep, that's very true.
So we wish Joey Votto the best, and our crystal ball is seeing him in Toronto next year. And by the time this airs, he may even have signed by there. So we shall see. We'll see y'all back next week on A Chosen Journey. We're going to talk about free agency and where, why, how teams pick up options, players pick up options, decline options. Let's get into this a little bit more because, as fans of the game, we have no clue why the heck things are done the way they are. Steve will share some insights. See y'all back real soon on The Chosen Journey.
See you later.